Justice Department's mishandlings of the matter, the Justice Department retaliated in issuing a subpoena for my own staff's phone records. That's right, challenging my constitutional rights of doing my oversight duties. What's next? Then a few Democratic colleagues pressured the FBI Foreign Influence Task Force to supposedly brief me and Senator Johnson related to our Biden family investigation. On August the 20th, Senator Johnson and I had that infamous briefing from the FBI. Later, this FBI's briefing contents were leaked to the media, even though the FBI promised confidentiality. That leak falsely labeled our oversight work as, you guessed it, Russian disinformation. To this day, over 4 years later, the intelligence community and the FBI refused to provide us the intelligence basis for that briefing. The title of this Wall Street Journal's article sums it up, quote, "The FBI's dubious briefing. Did the Bureau set 2 U.S. GOP senators up at the behest of Democrats? Question mark, end of quote. So, I know, as other people on this committee and in and out of Congress know, what government weaponization is. And then we get to Special Counsel Jack Smith and his lawfare operation. It involved an unprecedented FBI raid on Trump's house, including agents that even searched the former First Lady's clothing drawers. Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden certainly did not receive the same treatment by government regarding their records. Indeed, as my oversight exposed, the FBI amazingly agreed to destroy laptop records and records associated with Clinton's staff. This Orwellian conduct should have no quarter. On top of it all, the FBI Special Agent Thibault, the anti-Trump agent that violated the Hatch Act for political activities on the job, started one of Jack Smith's cases. But Jack Smith wasn't the only department official who tried to influence this past election. The Washington Post reported just last August about a previously undisclosed Mueller investigation into Trump that was closed for lack of evidence, and it being quote unquote fishing expedition. That news reporting was based on sealed court records, government records, and potentially classified information roughly 90 days before the last presidential election. The Justice Department leaked that information to the press to impact the election against President Trump. And they did it while stiff-arming congressional requests for information that would prove embarrassing to the Biden-Harris administration. So let us not forget some of the more and other flagrant abuses of power that we've seen from the DOJ and the FBI over the last 4 years. And I don't have the time to spend on these that I spent on 2 or 3 others, but just to list them. The Department of Justice used the might of the federal government to prosecute individuals peacefully praying outside of an abortion clinic. The FBI suggested that traditional Catholics could be domestic terrorism threats, claiming that these individuals adhere to, quote, anti-Semitic, anti-immigration, anti-LGBT, and white supremacy ideology, end of quote. The FBI opened dozens of investigations into parents who voiced their concerns at school board meetings regarding curriculum choices and COVID-19 mandates. The FBI applied undue pressure to social media platforms to censor so-called misinformation, downgrading or removing flagged social media posts and removing users. These are only a few particularly egregious examples of rot infesting the Department of Justice. The impact of this political infection in our once storied law enforcement institutions is catastrophic. By every metric, the Biden-Harris Justice Department conduct has failed to live up to our country's ideals. So, Ms. Bondi, should you be confirmed, the actions you take to change the department's course must be for accountability so that the conduct I just described never happens again. The only way to accomplish this is through transparency for the Congress and the American people. Now to my friend, Ranking Member Durbin.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. I appreciate your commitment to the Judiciary Committee's longstanding bipartisan practices for vetting presidential nominees. That was in doubt several weeks ago, but I spoke to Senator Grassley and he assured me that he's still personally committed, as I am, to maintaining these practices which we've established over the years. Our process is rigorous and it shows how seriously members on both sides of the aisle take our constitutional responsibility of advice and consent. Ms. Bondi, thanks for coming to my office last week to discuss your nomination. The importance of the Attorney General to our justice system cannot be overstated. As our nation's chief law enforcement officer, the Attorney General oversees the Department of Justice, which is responsible for protecting the civil rights of Americans, economic freedom and opportunity, public safety, and of course, national security. In short, the Attorney General has real impact on America's everyday life. It is critical that any nominee for this position be committed first and foremost to the Constitution and the American people, not any president or political agenda. But President Trump claims he has, quote, an absolute right to do what he wants with the Justice Department. And that's how he conducted his first term. He interfered with the criminal cases of his friends and allies and successfully pressured DOJ to investigate his rivals. He even tried to use the Justice Department to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. The president-elect made it clear that he values one thing above all else, and he said it over and over again: loyalty. Speaking about Attorney General Sessions, Donald Trump said, quote, "The only reason I gave him the job is because I felt loyalty. He was an original supporter." But when then Attorney General Sessions did the right thing and recused himself from the Mueller investigation, Trump said he should never have nominated him, and he fired him. Trump then nominated Bill Barr to succeed Sessions. Barr successfully auditioned for the job in an unsolicited memo to DOJ that sharply criticized the Mueller investigation. Once confirmed, Barr misrepresented and blocked the release of the report, intervened in multiple criminal cases of Trump's political allies, and spread falsehoods about election fraud. But in December of 2020, when Bill Barr finally announced there was no evidence of widespread voter fraud that would change the outcome of the election, Trump dismissed him, fired his second attorney general. This time around, President-elect Trump has vowed not just to use the Justice Department to advance his political interests, but also to seek, quote, retribution against, quote, the enemy within. He has repeatedly threatened to arrest, prosecute, jail, and otherwise punish those he considers his enemies. This includes reporters, prosecutors, judges, poll workers, military officials, and even his own former political appointees. Even before taking office, Trump has forced out his own FBI director that he appointed, Chris Wray, and he's trying to replace Wray with Kash Patel, whose main qualification to be FBI director seems to be his loyalty to Donald Trump. Patel has even compiled an enemies list of, quote, government gangsters to target that even includes former Trump appointees like Director Wray, Attorney General Barr, and Defense Secretary Esper. Trump's approach is a stark contrast with the bipartisan view born out of the post-Nixon era that the Justice Department should serve the interest of the American people, not any one president. For those who need a reminder, Richard Nixon ordered department officials to fire Archibald Cox, the special prosecutor investigating Watergate. Two of those officials, Elliot Richardson and William Ruckelshaus, resigned rather than carry out Richard Nixon's orders. When this committee considered the appointment of Loretta Lynch to be President Obama's Attorney General, a Republican member of the committee emphasized, and I quote, "What we need from our next Attorney General more than anything else is independence." That same member, who now still serves on the committee, said, and I quote, "The job is not to be the president's wingman. The job is to represent all Americans. The Attorney General must be willing to stand up to the president and say no when the office demands it." When Attorney General nominee Merrick Garland came before this committee, another one of my Republican colleagues still serving told Garland, and I quote, "My sole criterion for voting for your confirmation is your pledge to make sure that politics does not affect your job as Attorney General." So the view that the Justice Department must be insulated from political influence should not be weaponized against political rivals has historically been bipartisan, certainly on this committee. At this crucial moment in history, that view, not Mr. Trump's view, must prevail. Ms. Bondi, you have many years of experience in law enforcement, including nearly a decade of service as Attorney General in one of the largest states of the nation. But I need to know that you would tell the president no if you're asked to do something that is wrong, illegal, or unconstitutional. Ms. Bondi, you are one of 4 Trump personal lawyers that he has already selected for top positions in the Department of Justice. You joined Mr. Trump in working to overturn the 2020 election. You've repeatedly described investigations and prosecutions of Mr. Trump as witch hunts, and you have echoed his calls for investigating and prosecuting his political opponents. This flies in the face of evidence, like Mr. Trump's call to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger. We've all heard that audio recording. These are the kinds of anti-democratic efforts that in the past you have defended. And it's critical that we understand whether you remain supportive of Mr. Trump's actions. I also have questions whether you will focus on the needs of the American people rather than wealthy special interests. I'm concerned that you failed to identify your extensive lobbying for foreign governments and big corporations as potential conflicts of interest. There'll be questions in this hearing on that issue. That's why I've asked the Justice Department and the National Archives for information on Uber. I also have questions about some of your actions as Florida Attorney General. I'm concerned that your office failed to investigate more than 24 complaints about the for-profit Trump University after Mr. Trump donated to your reelection campaign and held a fundraiser for you at Mar-a-Lago. In addition, you have a long track record on the issue of civil rights, reproductive rights, voting rights, and LGBTQ rights that needs to be discussed. In contrast, Ms. Bondi, Merrick Garland didn't campaign for President Biden, never served as his personal attorney, never lobbied on behalf of foreign governments and corporate giants. After years of relentless criticism on Attorney General Garland from many of my Republican colleagues, I hope they're prepared to hold you to the same standard. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, it's now time for senators to introduce the nominee. The first one will be Senator Scott at the table, as you see, and Senator Schmidt is a member of this committee at his place on the dais. Senator Scott, please proceed.
Mr. Chairman, ranking member, and committee members, it is an absolute honor to sit before you today to introduce my good friend, Pam Bondi, for her nomination hearing. I'd also like to recognize some important people appearing in support of her today, her husband, John, as well as her mother, father-in-law, sister, brother, sister-in-law, and nephews, friends, and family members of John. Many more would surely be here if space allowed. I can tell you wholeheartedly that President Trump couldn't have a better leader than Pam Bondi for Attorney General. She is undoubtedly qualified, brilliant, and committed to defending and protecting the laws of this nation, and has a track record to prove it. It is no secret that the DOJ is facing a public trust crisis after Democrats spent years weaponizing the justice system and the entire federal government. They become an agency that attacks the American people instead of defending and protecting them. That will change under Pam Bondi. Under her leadership, the DOJ will actually fairly enforce the laws, protect the rights of the American people, and keep our nation safe, and crack down on violent crimes and dangerous drugs. And the American people will trust her to do so. I know that well because I worked alongside Pam Bondi for 8 years when I was governor of Florida, and she was Florida's elected attorney general, working to improve the lives of Floridians to make Florida the best state in the nation to live, work, and raise a family. Pam was an incredible partner, working to keep Florida safe and uphold the laws of our state, ensuring crime is aggressively pursued by law enforcement and prosecutors. President Trump has made clear that one of his top priorities is to reverse the rising rates of crime, and specifically violent crime, that have plagued our communities over the past 4 years. Pam Bondi is uniquely equipped to advance this priority as U.S. Attorney General because she has a proven track record of success in achieving dramatic reductions in crime and violent crime during her time as Florida's Attorney General. From 2010, the year before she took office, to 2018, the last year she was in office, together, Florida experienced a remarkable 26% drop in overall crime, including a 19.6% drop in violent crime and a 27.4% drop in property crime. These aren't just numbers. These are tens of thousands of lives saved and communities improved and made safer, and families and businesses protected. As Florida's Attorney General, Pam Bondi also spearheaded other life-saving initiatives like tackling the opioid epidemic and fighting human trafficking. Her achievements are too many for me to list in this short introduction. As U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi will restore law and order to the nation. She'll put Americans' interests first and make the nation a better and safer place. I urge every single member of this committee to support my friend Pam Bondi, and I look forward to voting for her confirmation soon on the Senate floor and help her get to work for the American people. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Durbin, and members of the committee. It is an honor for me and a privilege to introduce Pam Bondi, President Trump's nominee to be the 87th Attorney General of the United States. I have known and worked closely with Pam for years, and I'm glad to call her a friend. When Pam was nominated by President Trump, my reaction was, this is a home run. As many of us are, I was only to be outdone by Senator Graham, who described the nomination as a grand slam, touchdown, hole-in-one, ace, hat trick, slam dunk, Olympic gold medal pick, and he's right. As the letter joined by more than 100 former Justice Department officials put it, quote, it's all too rare for senior Justice Department officials, much less attorneys general, to have such a wealth of experience in the day-to-day work of keeping our communities safe, end quote. Pam exemplifies and personifies the Department of Justice's mission to uphold the rule of law, to keep our communities safe, and to protect our rights and liberties as Americans. Pam has in public service that has taken her from her small-town upbringing in Temple Terrace, Florida, hearing before this esteemed committee. After attending the University of Florida,
You will be very happy to know Finley is in cybersecurity. There's a third who is traveling abroad. I wish she could be here. My amazing father-in-law, David, my sister, Beth, my brother-in-law is home with my niece, my nephews, if you could just raise your hand, Evan, Jake, and soon-to-be niece, Savannah. My brother, Brad, a brilliant lawyer, my sister-in-law, Tandy, and my nephews, Justin, who just got a 4.0 at UVA, Rex, great college tennis player, Brad, great tennis player. Is Rhea here? And my niece, my beautiful niece, Rhea, and the little guy is in school because he's 10. My friends, Leslie, Kathy, Dina, Tiffany, Kim, Paula, and so many of my former coworkers, And Ranking Member Durbin, if you want to get dirt on me, these women have known me since I was a child. Seriously, most of them. So thank you for indulging me in that. They've all made a very long trip to be here. And thank you for holding my hearing as well and not postponing it. I appreciate that. Thank you all. From the moment I interned at the state attorney's office in Tampa, Florida, all I wanted to do was be a prosecutor. The Supreme Court certified me, and I had 4 jury trials while still in law school. Lost most of them, but had 4 jury trials and never wanted to do anything else. I continued my career there, trying everything from DUIs, domestic violence cases, capital murder cases, the whole gamut. I became a lead trial attorney in courtroom every day, trying career criminals, was deputy chief of a division, and then ultimately was felony bureau chief, and eventually left to become Florida's 37th Attorney General for the state of Florida. Nothing has impacted my career more than my experience as a state prosecutor, because I got to know and still keep in touch with many victims and their families from when I was a prosecutor. Upon becoming Attorney General in 2011, I proudly served for 2 terms. I was term limited. I would probably still be there right now had I not been kicked out of office by term limits. I loved being Attorney General. I did my best to keep Florida safe, to continue to stand up for victims of crime, and to fight the opioid crisis and the drug crisis that was not only facing Florida, but this entire country. Out of the top 100, this is one of the things I'm the most proud of, oxycodone dispensers in the entire country, I believe it was 98 of them, 90 or 98 of them, lived in Florida. We fought for tough legislation. Kids were dropping dead every day. We fought for tough legislation, and after that legislation, none of those opioid dealers, doctors, practiced in Florida. We fought to eliminate human trafficking by raising awareness and prevention and talking to parents and talking to children. We also provided critical resources, including safe houses, that my state was lacking. On the civil side, we worked to protect consumers. We tackled everything, including off-label prescription marketing, which affects, as you know, many, many people who can't afford prescriptions as well. We partnered with states' attorneys general from both parties and federal agencies across administrations. We went after price gougers during hurricanes. If confirmed as the next Attorney General of the United States, my overriding objective will be to return the Department of Justice to its core mission of keeping Americans safe and vigorously prosecuting criminals. And that includes getting back to basics: gangs, drugs, terrorists, cartels, our border, and our foreign adversaries. That is what the American people expect, and that is what they deserve from the Department of Justice. If confirmed, I will do everything in my power, and it will be my great responsibility to make America safe again. Making America safe again also requires reducing recidivism. We have to fix the Bureau of Prisons, and I am looking on both sides of the aisle. The Bureau has suffered from years of mismanagement, lack of funding, and low morale. I was proud to support President Trump's First Step Act. I think more can be implemented and more can be done on that front. President Trump's leadership on criminal justice reform has demonstrated what is possible when a president is unafraid to do things that have been deemed to be too difficult. We have to reach across the aisle and get solutions for all of these problems. Like the president, I believe we are on the cusp of a new golden age where the Department of Justice can and will do better if I am confirmed. Lastly, and most importantly, if confirmed, I will fight every day to restore confidence and integrity to the Department of Justice and each of its components. The partisanship, the weaponization will be gone. America will have one tier of justice for all. In all this work, I'll collaborate closely with this committee. I will work with all of you as I've committed to do when I met with almost all of you. And I will partner not only with the federal agencies, but with the state and local officials throughout our great country. I look forward to answering your questions today and working together for this country and our Constitution. Thank you, Senators.
I will ask first questions and Senator Durbin, and then I'll call on the Democrat people the way that Senator Durbin would say so on their arrival or here by seniority, in the same way that on the House side. And I'll make sure that I don't abuse the 7 minutes. I want you to have your attention on this binder that I put up here. It gets to a key factor of each senator's role in oversight. It contains 144 oversight letters that I sent to the Biden-Harris Justice Department and its component agencies, with many of those letters in there to the FBI. Adding letters to the Inspector General, that would be about 165 letters. So I've sent more letters since you've been in my office before Christmas. Should you be confirmed, 144 letters will be your responsibility. The responses I have received so far fall in 2 categories. First, they weren't answered at all. Second, I received a response, but it didn't fully respond. Said another way, the Justice Department merely sent me words on a piece of paper. So, should you be confirmed, you'll have an obligation to respond even to the minority and consider a letter from them, even if my signature's not on it, as they want information. Will you commit to responding to my oversight requests as well as the requests of other members of the committee?
Chairman, either I or my top staff will personally review the letters and do everything we can to respond to you.
Your tenure as Florida Attorney General was impressive. You fought against pill mills, human trafficking. You eliminated a backlog of rape test kits in state labs. You fought against organized retail theft, and you were known to stand for law and order. With such achievements, it's easy to see why the people of Florida re-elected you in 2014 and why President-elect Trump nominated you to serve as the nation's chief law enforcement officer. So this gives you a chance to tell us on this committee and the people of this country what you're proud of as your record as Attorney General of Florida.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I was truly honored to serve the people of the state of Florida for 8 years, but it was a team effort. I had great people around me, many of whom are in this room today. And we did a lot. We did a lot to fight crime, and I've been reminiscing a lot since I was asked to take this nomination. Opioids, as I talked about, were a top priority right when I took office. When I was running for office, I went through the entire state of Florida. Parents were walking up to me, handing me pictures of their children who were deceased from opioid abuse. After I was elected, I took those pictures and I framed them in my office. as a goal of stopping that fight, which I talked about in my opening statement. And if U.S. Attorney General, I'll bring those pictures back out and they will be there to inspire me on the further drug abuse we're facing throughout this country. We also learned that something else was happening. Pregnant women were having babies as a result of being opioid dependent. We call it neonatal abstinence syndrome. We fought to educate mothers. We fought that issue as well. Fentanyl was wreaking havoc in our country, but it was just getting started. I actually fought my own party a bit on scheduling fentanyl because at that time people thought it was something you merely got in the hospital on a patch after surgery. Apples and oranges, and boy, do we all know that now, the difference. Fentanyl is raging throughout our country, and I will do everything I can to fight that with the agencies that fall under the Department of Justice. Human trafficking became a top priority for me as Attorney General. I had the opportunity on a bipartisan trip to go to Mexico, and the one thing I found out there, they were doing better than we were. They had safe houses. I saw things I never dreamed I would see, and all of these things in my past have formed the person I am right now sitting here before you. I came back to Florida. We started a human trafficking council, and we partnered with others, and we expanded and added safe houses in the state of Florida. I don't know how many are in this country right now, but I would like to partner with both sides, if confirmed, to continue those efforts.
I'd like to interrupt you
Yes, sir.
and go to another question. And I'll have another round so you can finish on that point. I'd like to ask you about something that's central to fighting government waste and fraud, the False Claims Act. I want you to know that Attorney General Garland calls me once a year. He called me yesterday to tell me the success of the False Claims Act. Since 1986, when I got it passed and President Reagan signed it, it's brought in $78 billion as of yesterday, his report, $2.9 billion for the year of 2024. Most of that's because of patriotic whistleblowers who found the fraud and brought the cases forward at their own risk. The Supreme Court has long upheld the law's constitutionality, but I want you to know your view. Is the False Claims Act constitutional? Before you answer that, one time in the 1990s, one of the attorney generals said it wasn't constitutional, and when that same person by the name of Barr was back 5 years ago to be attorney general, he said it was constitutional. So if confirmed, will you commit? Well, answer that first question. Do you think it's constitutional? Would you defend the constitutionality of it?
I would defend the constitutionality, of course, of the False Claims Act,
Okay.
Senator.
Last question, if confirmed, would you commit to continuing DOJ's defense of the constitutionality of it? And will you assure the entire staff and funding levels to properly support and prosecute false claim cases?
Senator, the False Claims Act is so important, and especially by what you said with whistleblowers as well, and the protection and the money it brings back to our country. Yes, sir.
Thank you for your answers. Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Ms. Bondi, if you're successful in your nomination, this Democrat would like to give you 3 words of advice. Answer Grassley's letters. You'll never hear the end of it if you don't. At issue, I believe, in this nomination hearing is not your competence nor your experience. At issue is your ability to say no. More than any other cabinet official, the Attorney General has to be prepared to put the Constitution first and even tell the President of the United States you're wrong. The political danger and personal costs of such a decision are well documented. You have only to ask former Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, whom Donald Trump sacked for lack of loyalty. And so I have 3 basic questions I'd like to ask you. Most Americans believe that central to the peaceful transition of power in a democracy is the acceptance of the results of an election. To my knowledge, Donald Trump has never acknowledged the legal results of the 2020 election. Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden is the President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States. There was a peaceful transition of power. President Trump left office and was overwhelmingly elected in 2024.
Do you have any doubts that Joe Biden had the majority of votes, electoral votes necessary to be elected president in 2020?
You know, Senator, all I can tell you as a prosecutor is from my firsthand experience. And I accept the results. I accept, of course, that Joe Biden is president of the United States. But what I can tell you is what I saw firsthand when I went to Pennsylvania as an advocate for the campaign. I was an advocate for the campaign, and I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw many things there. But do I accept the results? Of course I do. Do I agree with what happened? And I saw so much. You know, no one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country. We should all want our elections to be free and fair, and the rules and the laws to be followed.
I think that question deserved a yes or no. And I think the length of your answer is an indication that you weren't prepared to answer yes. Have you heard the recording of President Trump on January 2nd, 2021, when he urged the Secretary of State of Georgia to, quote, find 11,780 votes and declare him the winner of that state?
No, I've heard about it through clips, but no, Senator, I've not heard it.
What was your reaction to President Trump making that call?
I would have to listen to the tape, Senator.
Well, the quote that I give you is exact. He said to the Georgia Secretary of State, find 11,780 votes.
Do you have the entire context of that call? I feel like it was much longer than that and may have been taken out of
It
context.
was an hour long.
Right.
And you can certainly listen to it. I hope you will. Every American should. As a former prosecutor, are you not concerned that the President of the United States called a state election official and asked him to find enough votes to change the results of the election?
Senator, I have not listened to the hour-long conversation, but it's my understanding that is not what he asked him to do.
You need to listen to it. Let me ask a third question. Do you believe that the January 6 rioters who've been convicted of violent assaults on police officers should be pardoned?
Senator, if confirmed as Attorney General of the United States, the pardons, of course, fall under the president. But if asked to look at those cases, I will look at each case and advise on a case-by-case basis, just as I did my entire career as a prosecutor.
You also advise the president on pardons as part of your responsibility as Attorney General. And so I'm asking you, do you believe that those who've been convicted of the January 6 riot, violent assaults on our police officers should be pardoned? That's a simple question.
So, Senator, I have not seen any of those files, of course. If confirmed and if asked to advise the president, I will look at each and every file. But let me be very clear in speaking to you. I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
Let me ask you about your work as a lobbyist for Ballard Partners. You did not list your current position as a partner at the lobbying firm, nor the work you've done for your Ballard partner clients, such as lobbying for the country of Qatar for $115,000 a month, and for corporate giants, Amazon and Uber, when you're asked about conflicts of interest. Why do you believe your work as a lobbyist does not constitute potential conflicts of interest?
Well, Senator, first, that was the amount my firm received. I believe multiple people represented the country of Qatar within my firm. My role, and I am very proud of the work that I did. It was a short time, and I wish it had been longer for Qatar, was anti-human trafficking efforts leading into the World Cup, which is something I'd like to talk about later too. I was registered as FARA. along with many members of my firm. That was the sole portion of my representation for Qatar. Now, if there are any conflicts with anyone I represented in private practice, I would consult with the career ethics officials within the department and make the appropriate decision. I would also like to point out to you, I don't believe that I would be the first Attorney General who has represented and advocated for businesses in their past.
Of course not. The question is whether you will recuse yourself from any case involving your Ballard clients. One of those clients was the GEO Group, was it not?
Geo, yes.
A private prison company you lobbied for. It manages correctional institutions and detention facilities. The GEO Group has faced criticism for safety violations, inadequate health care, and poor management. The U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement is GEO's largest source of revenue. Under the Trump administration, GEO stands to earn hundreds of millions of dollars by detaining immigrants if there is this mass deportation. Would you sense any conflict of interest if you're asked to judge the performance of this government contractor?
Senator, I will consult with the career ethics officials within the Department of Justice and make the appropriate decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank
You
you.
forgot to say that John's family was from South Carolina.
The upstate, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Give you a pass on that. From Anderson, by the way. So listen, President Trump asked a bunch of us, who would you pick for Attorney General? How many of you got asked that on our side? Probably didn't ask Dick, but he asked me. I said Pam Bondi. That's like an easy decision. I couldn't think of anybody more qualified that he knew, that he trusted. And it's okay to have, you were his lawyer, right?
Yes, sir. I represented him when they tried to impeach him the first time as part of White House Counsel, Office of Special Counsel.
Being Trump's lawyer prepares you for many things. So, yeah, you have a longstanding relationship with the president. He trusts you. That's a good thing. That's probably why President Kennedy picked his brother, Bobby Kennedy. I guess you can say no to your older brother. I'm sure he would. But this idea there's something bad is ridiculous. Who do you pick? You pick people you know. You pick people you trust, people that you're qualified. I'm glad he picked you. He knows you, he trusts you, and you're highly qualified. So the idea that there's something wrong with that is just absolutely ridiculous. So let's talk about the job you're about to have here. Do you support making certain drug cartels in Mexico foreign terrorist organization?
Senator, I personally went to Mexico. I personally dealt with these cartels when I was a state prosecutor, and they are a grave and violent threat
You
to our
consider
country. Yes, Senator.
Advising the president. Good, good. Now, when it comes to Crossfire Hurricane, are those days over if you're Attorney General?
Absolutely.
Okay. Lake and Riley, are you familiar with that case?
Sadly, I am, Senator Graham.
Do you know why the man who killed her was released from custody? He was paroled to the detention capacity at the Central Processing Center in El Paso, Texas. Now, that's not your call. You'll be DOJ. But do you agree with me that the statute regarding parole doesn't allow parole to be based on we don't have detention beds? There's nothing in that statute would authorize parole based on lack of capacity. Are you familiar with that statute?
Yes, sir, and that's frightening.
Yeah, well, it's frightening. Are you going to fix it?
I am going to do everything in my power to fix it
Well,
if confirmed as Attorney
You're going to
General.
advise President Trump we need more beds. Tom Holman's the guy that's going to do this, but would you as Attorney General say we need more bed space so Lake and Riley never happens again?
Senator, my job, if confirmed as Attorney General, will be to keep America safe.
Do you think we
And that
need more
include-
detention space?
And that includes having enough space for violent criminals, for people that should not be in this country who
Yeah.
have committed violent crimes.
To
And
the
Lake and
public?
Riley is one of many.
Yeah. But
Thank you.
41,000 beds in this country to detain people. We got like millions of people here illegally. We let this dude go because we didn't have any place to put him. I hope those days are over. And if Tom, you're listening out there, I hope you'll create enough detention space to make sure we don't find this dilemma ever again. Do you think we're at war? And if so, who with?
Oh, Senator, we're at war on so many fronts.
Are
Of
we at
cour-
war with ISIS?
Of course, we're at war with ISIS.
They're at war with us. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely,
Do
Senator.
you think since our withdrawal from Afghanistan, threats to our homeland have gone up from ISIS?
Yes.
Okay, March 7th, 2024, General Corella. I assess ISIS-K retains the capability and will to attack the U.S. and Western interests abroad in as little as 6 months with little or no warning. That's March of 2024. General McKenzie, ISIS-K has a strong desire to attack the United States after it began to grow in Afghanistan following U.S. exit in August 2021. He also stated the threat to ISIS-K from ISIS-K is growing. Major General Quantock, the U.S. remains target number one for ISIS-K. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I don't have my security clearance, but from everything I've read and heard, ISIS is one of the greatest threats.
Okay, well, when you get your security clearance, you're going to find out these people are coming after us and they want to kill us. So I would like to have a strategy to deal with the ISIS threat that's beyond just the law enforcement model. Does that make sense to you that we should use every tool in the toolbox?
Senator, that includes wrapping in our state and local officials too, and better cooperation throughout our country and our world.
I totally agree. Do you support reauthorizing FISA in 2025?
Senator, I believe 702 is up in 2026.
Okay, I'm
I
sorry,
believe it's
26.
2026, and we will closely be looking at that. FISA is a very
Do you
important
agree
tool.
that the 702 provides important intel gathering capabilities